Hello, beautiful legends, and welcome to Blunt Force Healing Podcast, episode 329. It's video update number 107, I believe. So, in total, just as a reminder or kind of refresher for those of you that might have been here once or twice in the past, or you're totally new to the project or to the podcast and blog. This is a journal. It happens daily, so both the video and audio update in form of podcast happens daily, and there is also associated blog underpinning this project, which kind of started the whole thing, and there is a blog post every day as well. So every single day I write the blog post and record the video update with audio, obviously available for those podcasters that or people that are listening to podcasts in audio version only. Today is Sunday. Surprise, surprise. End of the weekend, kind of, because, that's how it is. That's how we established it as human beings and as a civilization. So for most of you, it's probably day of relax, maybe day to close things for the week and to plan for the next week. I'm jealous if you're one of those people that plan the next week every Sunday, because I always wanted to do that, but so far I failed to achieve any form of kind of structuring that part of planning. It's actually a good idea that I might look into it and start from next Sunday and maybe even write a blog post about it. But for now, Sunday is always kind of sad day, to be honest. I don't like Sundays, even though we usually do as a family some cool hikes or trips on Sundays, and they are great and exciting, but there's always that thought of coming into Monday and starting that 9 to 5, because I am in 9 to 5 still, and even if my business takes off to these decent levels, I think 9 to 5 will be in some form existing in my life to some extent. Probably maybe more of a part-time job, maybe not 9 to 5, or maybe just a couple of days a week, but unless it affects the finances and taxation too much, I think it's good to have that kind of stable stream of income and build on top of that something bigger. But today's post is not about it. And to be honest, I didn't have any decent topic today to cover, but I want to touch a little bit about the satellite habits that I have, and those of you who listen or read the blog know about it. Those of you that are new to the project, satellite habits are additional things that I do daily on top of the core habit, which is the project itself. So writing or blogging and podcasting is core habit that I do everything in my life to make sure that the write-up and recording happens every day, regardless where I am, what I do, and how I feel. And probably those of you that are long-term listeners, watchers, or readers, you know that there were bad moments in my life, especially when I felt sick or really kind of on the low mental side. But this is it. This blog is meant to be authentic, and I'm trying to picture my life as is. I want to make sure that it's not only the recording and accountability for myself, but also something to reminisce about in the future and see how far I went, and also to show all of you, especially newcomers, that life is about, ups and downs, and these recordings are the proof of it. Every single day is recorded to some extent, so you can see both the exciting bits and those that are not necessarily very exciting. What I wanted to touch about today is something that made me a little bit upset while we were on our trip, on a short trip to make a walk along the river called Ini Water. There's to some extent you can call it a path or kind of a trail, but it used to be very grassy and boggy at times, so you need to make sure that you have either the long kind of hiking boots or some form of wellies, or generally shoes that are waterproof and you can go through the mud at times. Sometimes it's just a normal path in the woods or along the river, but sometimes obviously there is water coming into the river from different hills and areas that are more boggy, so it makes it harder to go through. So if you have like a normal trainers or sneakers or shoes that are not waterproof, you might get them really dirty and you might get wet a lot. So I told that to my wife because she doesn't like those kind of paths, and we went there with Julian in the past, and we found a lot of nice mushrooms, so she wanted to go there and take a walk today and try it. And while we were there, I already could see, because I'm kind of keen forager, especially for mushrooms, I could see that somebody went through these areas in search for mushrooms. But what I wanted to touch on is, I would say, two kind of people that go for mushroom or any type of foraging. There are those kind of Kevin/Karens of the woods and grasslands, and I'll explain what does it mean. And it's probably about 95% of those people, if not more. And then there's a small fraction of people, and it's a privilege to be one of them, I think, that really care about not only environment, but all those gifts of nature, and in this case, mushrooms, that we get for free, and nature doesn't ask for anything in return. But I think there's a ethical side to how people should forage for mushrooms. So let's start with the kind of people that are majority of those that go for mushroom hunting, I would say, or harvesting. We call it foraging, but I don't like to associate the word foraging with those people. And I don't want to generalize in terms of what these people or who these people are in the rest of their lives, because they might be quite decent people, not understanding what they do in the forest. So if there are people that are listening to me and maybe doing those things that I will mention in a second, it's not about pointing fingers or blaming, but educating people and making sure that if they're not aware that they do something wrong, to touch on those points and bring them to that fraction of respectful foragers and people that really love forests, love nature, and want our environment to keep giving and be sustainable. So one of the first things that I see when I go through the forest, and it's probably not the first thing that comes to the head of the average person that doesn't care about mushrooms. And again, those 95, I would say roughly people, it's not about 95% of people on the planet. I'm talking about specifically of people that go to the forest to collect mushrooms. So they have certain knowledge of what they want from the forest. They know what to look for, because there's a lot of walkers in the forest that don't care about mushrooms. And while there are obviously people that kick mushrooms or squash them or step on them and destroy them, I don't want to touch on that because I have no respect to those people. I know that sometimes kids go there and it's fun to kick the mushroom, and to some extent it's not necessarily super bad, because when that mushroom is kicked, the spores are actually spreading across the area, and to some extent they're actually helping to build or kind of seed or sow the seeds of the mushroom, if you can say that, because they are not necessarily seeds, but they work similar way. To some extent they will grow mycelium, which is like a network of tiny hair-like or microscopic how do you call it? I lost the word. But there's like a network of things that are connected. Jesus Christ, I can't remember the English word for that. Wow. But imagine the net. It's like a net, but it's very irregular, and it grows under the ground, so underground basically, in the soil. It depends on the mycelium. It might be closer to surface, it might be deeper, but in general, imagine a net that is underneath the ground. So you have a forest, you have plants that have different kind of roots and network of roots, and those roots are usually interconnected with the net of mycelium of different type of mushrooms. So the mushrooms that we see in the forest are not necessarily the thing that you should be looking into. It's not the core of the whole thing. It's like mushrooms that you see in the forest are more like a fruit of a tree. The tree itself is the mycelium, so that net underground. And it grows over time. It becomes more and more spread out, more dense, and works more efficiently as it grows and over time. And when the time comes, it needs to grow fruits, kind of. And those fruits are basically those mushrooms that we see over the ground. So everything that becomes colorful and nice and brings that, variation of the environment and makes the forest colorful and interesting outside of the trees and grass and moss. So those fruits of the mycelium, the mushrooms, they grow for a short amount of time to spread the spores and then die out, basically degrade, until they can come up in different areas again, in different spots. And those spores are helping to grow more mycelium and interconnect it further and on different levels. So this is a very complex network that helps, as we discovered in recent years, it helps actually trees and plants to communicate. And that's a big topic that I don't want to touch on now. And they usually cooperate. There are fungi that help to decompose dead wood. There are fungi that are parasitic, that are actually bad for trees. They kill trees, and usually the trees that are weak or are already sick or damaged, but also the healthy trees. So it's not necessarily always a good thing if the mycelium spreads of those parasitic mushrooms. And then there are mycorrhizal mushrooms that are basically cooperating, and they use trees to help them get nutrients and different things that trees can produce, because they are at the external kind of beings over the ground, and they have ability to to use their green leaves and parts for photosynthesis and create a lot of nutrients that mushrooms or mycelium needs, while mycelium then kind of returns the favor by giving trees opportunity to exchange nutrients, communicate. As I said, you can look for the research that is very interesting about trees being able to kind of communicate, not necessarily how human do, but in a way that trees can help other trees in healing process, and mycelium helps in that as well. There's a lot of very interesting and amazing things that are happening. So the mycorrhizal mushrooms usually collaborate with different types of trees, and some specific species of mushrooms and mycelium only works with specific species of trees. So it's a very interesting area. And once those mushrooms pop up, the people that are ignorant, they will just kick them because it's a fun thing to do. And to some extent, you're kind of helping, but at the same time you're breaking them. They lie around the area, and it's just devastation. So it's a divisive kind of topic. I am on the side of not kicking the mushrooms, especially the fresh ones and that are not yet grown well. The big mushrooms that are already kind of being eaten by snails, and you can see that they are decomposing, that's a different story. You might as well kind of destroy them. It won't make any difference for the forest. But I really don't like, and it's my personal view, when there are colorful, very young and nice and healthy mushrooms growing that make the forest a nice place, colorful and very interesting to be. I don't like people destroying them, because it doesn't help that much. And it's more from ethical point of view. And let's get to the people that are foragers, or they call themselves foragers, but they are just basically harvesters. Most of the people that have cultural roots in foraging for mushrooms or harvesting them. They go like real harvesters. They take everything that they can, and as much as they can. And I suspect that many of them, maybe they are selling those mushrooms when they dry them, or they just throw away a lot of them. I don't know, but I can't imagine people consuming these amounts of mushrooms that I see very often that they gather. Like, we mean buckets and kilograms, tens of kilograms of mushrooms. It's very hard to consume them unless you're on the mushroom diet only, I would say, or you're very much a person that kind of eats enormous amounts of mushrooms, and most of those people don't. So I'm not sure if they digest them pretty fast, but mushrooms are not the thing that you can digest very fast. They are usually quite hard to digest. That's why we need to give them thermal treatment, be it cooking them to some extent, frying, etc. And then there are people that are very respectful to the mushrooms. And when I saw that forest, which I've been before, and it looked like untouched area where the mushrooms can grow to the really serious specimens. And if I see the mushroom that is very big, I know that it's already probably not the best for cooking and drying, and it's likely infested with maggots, so I won't have any use of them. So I just leave them to maybe grow a little bit more and just decompose naturally. But some people can't get over it, and they will just cut that mushroom. They will probably slice it to see if they can get any healthy part of that mushroom, and if they can, you can see a lot of slices and around the area just spread out, and it will help mushroom to grow. But again, this is kind of visually not appealing, and people have no big respect to that. But today what I've seen was, there was a particular area that I knew that I found mushrooms that are not edible and actually are toxic or poisonous. And there were about 5 or 6 specimens that somebody pulled over and left in the same spot. And I can't understand it. Person that knows mushrooms and is a real forager, when somebody sees 5 or 6 specimens of a really kind of rare or kind of mushroom that potentially is edible, if you pull one of them and you see that it's inedible, it's almost 100% fair to say that the other ones in this particular kind of small area are the same species. If they look exactly the same, or the same species, they are the same species. So I don't know what's the point. If you pull another one and you see still that's the same thing, you just leave them and not pull the rest of them, because what I don't see, and I saw 5 or 6 specimens pulled and left there to rot, and it's kind of upsetting and sad. I don't know, maybe it's just me. As I say, this is not 100% clear or kind of proven that it's just a bad thing, because to some extent, if you slice the mushroom and just spread around the area, you're spreading the spores and potentially helping the mycelium to grow. So it might be good, but again, from the aesthetic, visual and ethical point of view, my individual view is it's not nice. And then you can clearly see that that person was only picking the mushrooms that they knew that are edible, kind of common mushrooms, and they passed the mushrooms that were in the plain sight, were edible, but they didn't know, and they just kicked them or stepped on them. You can see that it's a purposeful. It's not like they accidentally kicked them, because they are like kicked all over the shop, and that's something that I don't like. But yeah, I think I diverged from the topic too much. Maybe I'm just kind of a weirdo, but it's very unappealing when you go through the forest, and especially the one that is very old, and you can see that there's plenty of species. It makes the place look amazing. All those colors, all those different types, shapes of mushrooms, and somebody just goes through it and just kicks them or stomps on them, and it looks like you're just trashing the place. The grass is stepped on. It's like some herd of animals went through it in panic and destroyed the area, while you can just go nicely and respectfully through the area and collect those mushrooms that you want. Those that you don't, you just leave for the nature to take their time and the cycle to complete. And that would be very nice to see in more and more people, rather than just them destroying that and leaving like a mayhem and unappealing visuals, instead of kind of being respectful for the nature. It gives it for free. Mushrooms are very nutritious if you know which ones to pick. If you don't, you can learn easily. Some species are more difficult, some species are quite easy, so you start with those easy ones that have very little kind of similar species that might be dangerous, and you go from there. Once you get used and your eyes and your brain gets used to finding those mushrooms, you also, by pure learning and visuals, you learn to spot other mushrooms and then identify them with the books, like the mushroom atlases, or encyclopedias. And you grow, you educate yourself, and you get to know a more intermediate or more advanced species. And then you're more also resilient and sustainable in not only picking one species but multiple species and mixing them together, getting the benefits of different types, because they also differ in nutritious and medicinal benefits and features. So it's very important to be thoughtful about what you do. All right, this 26 minutes past. I still need to get to the shop and prepare the dinner. So let me wrap up. Thank you very much for coming, for listening of my rant about foraging, and maybe I generalized people too much, but this is something that I've heard a lot from different people foraging for mushrooms, and they see, and I can hear similar vibe and view on what is happening. So it's not only my personal view, but it's my individual perspective by observing and listening to others that really respect nature and forage for mushrooms. So once again, thank you very much for your time. It was very nice, and it was a pleasure and privilege to record it for you. Have a great day or evening wherever you are. Stay tuned and see you tomorrow.